Steve Witkoff, the man who in the past has said that he was surprised that Hamas wasn't honest about their negotiations with him and their promises they gave him, he said, it's okay, they gave me another promise, and it's the fact that they will disarm. This was Steve Witkoff. Recently, the special or the what is the position now? I forgot. The special envoy to Middle East. That's the position he's holding at the White House. He is part of many negotiations together with Jared Kushner. And we have another of these promises from Hamas. So this is the main topic we'll discuss today. And generally, we'll talk about a lot of these different relations Israel is trying to have with oftentimes dictatorships. We'll talk about the Turkey and what role they will play in Gaza, since it looks like they really would like some. We'll talk about potential military bases in Syria, and of course, a big story. Kazakhstan joining the Abraham Accord, so another nation joining sort of these normalizations of relations with Israel. So we'll also talk about that. Joining me today are Jonathan Honig and E.R. Reichel. Thank you guys for joining me today. And I'll go to you, E.R. So uh, if I pull up a quote from Steve Witkoff, he has said, Hamas has always indicated that they will disarm. They've said so. They said it to us directly during that famous meeting that Jared had with them. Now, when he says Hamas has always indicated they would disarm, he's of course lying or maybe ignorant. I mean, we are talking about Steve Witkoff, but when the ceasefire happened, the day the ceasefire happened, Hamas has already said, "Oh yeah, we're not planning to disarm." So, I mean, what do you make of this? Is this just Steve Witkoff sort of trying his wishes to come true?
So there is a coined term in Israel, relatively new, and it's basically, if I want to translate it to English, I would say this dude lives in October 6th. He's still in October 6th.
Mm.
And and this on the one hand, it has self-criticism because it's usually addressed to Israeli. It has self-criticism on one hand, but on the other hand, it says, okay, after October 7th, we woke up. So basically, October 6th mentality is this self-deception, evasion, one lying to oneself in order to have his moral sanctions to the Palestinians to still exist. So he just ignores the facts of reality, blames himself, lies to himself that everything's okay and that we're in control and we can handle this situation. So this was the mentality of the Israelis up to October 7th, 2023, when it all shattered on the grotesque reality of Hamas executing what they've always said they want to do. So he's on October 6th mentality. He forgot, or he doesn't care, or he doesn't know, or he evades. And you can negotiate and deal and make business with Hamas. They're legitimate, viable partners for negotiation. So this is an indication, a concrete case that demonstrates and shows how morally flawed is to negotiate with terrorists. This is the result of negotiating with terrorists. This is the price we're now going to have to pay for us making deals with Hamas. And that is being pressured by our allies to give moral sanction to those monsters and to see them as viable trade partners to do deals with and to expect them to follow their commitments. And this is just absurd. These are people aiming to kill me. These are people actively acting in order to achieve the goal of my death. This is not somebody who's trying to sell me his sofa, and we have to find a common ground on the price, accepting the premise that I have a right to even have property in the first place. Like in this example, it's a thief denying my right for property, or a murderer denying my right to life. There is no room for agreement. Such murderer is my responsibility to make sure he's going to smell the flowers from the bottom of the graveyard. So this is just insane, absurd. And the thing I want to say about it is that the American administration they want a deal so bad. They want whatever is going to happen next, Abraham Accord or some coalition of some whatever. They want the ceremony with the flowers and the declaration so badly. They are willing to pressure Israel to commit actions that will in fact mean Israel giving up its sovereignty, its security, its future, and Israel basically putting itself in incredible risks, danger, humiliation, surrender of their independence. This is horrible.
Yeah, and
I'm saying, I'm paraphrasing Miss Rand's comment, something to the effect of, in any compromise between good and evil, it is only evil that can benefit. And it is only evil, aka Hamas and the Palestinians who support them, that benefit from this. The sickening part of that is even in the so-called prisoner swap, where Hamas is returning the supposed remains of hostages they took, and they're actually not the remains of those Israelis. They're just some random person's remains. So they can't be trusted for a minute. This only emboldens them. And Yara, I think you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, President Trump, I think, played a part in strong arming the Israelis into not doing what needs to be done, which is not just disarming Hamas, but defanging militant Islam. It doesn't matter if they reform under another name. Now they're Islamic, forever, or Islamic for now. If these ideas remain that it's okay to want to destroy the state of Israel, to kill Jews all over the world, then you haven't really won the war. And unfortunately, America's pressure for peace, disarmed Israel at just the wrong time.
Yeah, and something to also bring up. I should mention the quotes from Witkoff are from the American Business Forum conference in Miami. That was yesterday, November 6th. And he also said this there. I hope that they keep their word, because if they do, they'll understand that the development plan that we have for Gaza is really terrific. A lot better than anyone has ever discussed before. He also adds tremendous jobs program. And that's fundamental misunderstanding of what even Hamas or Palestinians themselves stand for. Like trying to talk to Hamas, trying to talk to Palestinians, or trying to see that we've only haven't offered them good enough deal. We only haven't offered them good enough jobs program, or enough amnesty, or enough foreign aid, or whatever. Like if we just do enough of that, that will solve the issue. That is fundamentally misunderstanding, or not even looking at the situation on point, because that is not what is happening. The goal of Hamas and Palestinians is to destroy the state of Israel. Unless you're willing to compromise on that, unless you're willing to give them a good deal on that specific thing, you'll never get a deal. So the only reason why they would ever accept a deal is they see a potential where they will be able to destroy the state of Israel at some point. Jonathan, it seems like you want to jump in.
I was going to say, what's so telling now is, even now 2+ years after tremendous destruction in Gaza, as I understand it, a majority of Palestinians still justify the attacks, still support Hamas vis-a-vis the attacks. And until that culture is destroyed, is programmed, then Israel in the West is going to continue to be, potentially a victim. Once again, even if it's reformed. I think that's the irony, is that we could get Hamas to disarm, but then, we get some other Islamist Palestinian group in there who has Israel and Americans in their eyesight, the West in their eyesight. So, until this part of Islam kind of grows up, becomes defanged, becomes like Israel. I mean, this is the irony. People always think of Israel as the Jewish state. I think Dr. Brook made the point, Israel is a state for Jews, but it's a state for anyone who respects reason. I mean, all the innovation that comes out of Israel, this tiny slice of the world that's as big as Rhode Island, all of the tremendous wealth that it creates for everyone who interacts with it, and as against the Palestinian people who, live seemingly in complete, interest in only killing Jews over and over again.
We have a super chat from Bonnie. Thank you so much. And yeah, you mentioned Palestinian support October 7. A new survey came out from the what is it called? The Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research. And specifically in Gaza, the question, in your view, was Hamas' decision to launch its offensive against Israel on 7th of October a correct or incorrect one? In May 2025, 37% of Palestinians in Gaza believed it was a correct decision, and that went to 44%. And if you include all of Palestinians, it's 53% of Palestinians believe it was a correct decision. Still, 2 years after, and what has happened in the meantime was, of course, the ceasefire. So, I mean, the question also is like, even if we accepted that Hamas actually wants peace, wants a two-state solution, wants to live side by side with Israel, the fact is they have committed October 7 and they've waged the war for 2 years. Even if they actually did want peace right now, which again, you cannot even accept, would that be like a just thing to do after everything that has happened?
I reject this question because I see it as a rationalization. Like it's impossible to rationally reach the conclusion that there is anything good about Hamas. And I'll tell you something even broader, in broader terms. I cannot trust whomever defines himself as a Palestinian. The sheer definition of a Palestinian is the same as saying I'm a Nazi. Would you trust such a person who tells you, "Hey, I'm a neo-Nazi"? Would you make deals with him? Would you cooperate with him? Would you try to achieve peace with such a person? Now, an Arab Palestinian is the equivalent of a German Nazi. I have no problems with people from whatever race. I have problem with people holding a political identity by choice, which means they want to make me die. In both cases, it's anti-Semitism. Just happened to be that. But it's basically a whole political identity devoted to basically sacrificing your life so Jews will die. This is Palestinianism. It always has been. Since the days of Haj Amin al-Husseini in British Mandate Palestine that sat to coffee with Adolf Hitler discussing how to destroy the Jews, it never changed. Before the state of Israel was even founded, when Jews lived here with the permission of the British king, as well as Arabs, it was a movement devoted to ridding the Middle East of Jews by murder, by slaughter, by rape, by drowning, by extortion. It doesn't matter. And I cannot trust anyone who identify as a Palestinian or a pro-Palestinian, because it's basically it's as if he's holding the Nazi ideology. The difference is in the concretes and in the manifestation of the idea to kill all the Jews. One is into neoclassical aesthetics and the Aryan race, and the other is for tyrannical Islamism. But in essence, it's a movement of hatred and death. So, like this whole thing, and this is the reason why I am so outraged by that deal. Because before this deal, the statement was Hamas is going to be destroyed. And the reason is what he did. Hamas committed October 7th. Now he's going to be destroyed. That was the statement. Now, the statement is, if Hamas will not follow the deal, he will be destroyed. What is the implicit message when you combine these two statements, when you look at them? First we said A, now we're saying B. What is the conclusion? The conclusion is Hamas committed a massacre. We said we're going to destroy them. Then we made a deal. So now we're no longer have any reason to destroy Hamas. And he basically gets a moral sanction. He can exist unless he breaks the deal. What is the message to those who hold the ideology of Palestinianism in order to destroy Israel? What is the message to the other Islamists in Iran and in Lebanon, wherever? What is the message is, listen, you can keep trying over and over again to destroy the Jews. Just make sure you get a good deal afterwards, and then you can try again. Those people always get a second chance. And Israel never get a chance to destroy its enemies that initiated horrible acts of violence and aggression in order to destroy. But Israel cannot actually never allowed to defend itself. And I'll give you an honest thing, like as self-criticism about Israel. We never allow ourselves as well. We're not innocent of this moral crime of not sanctioning the good, of not allowing the good to do what's right and to actually protect itself against evil. And it's a tragedy. And there is a big problem in the world, in New York, in Europe, in many places, and those evil ideologies thrive. And in essence, it's because of this moral weakness, and everything just boils out right now. And I'm very worried about where things are going.
I'll say your point about, sanctioning Hamas, sanctioning Palestinians just by dealing with them. I feel like that's a lot of what Ms. Rand talked about in terms of when you deal with savages as real people, you give them a dignity and you embolden them and those who would be motivated by them. Imagine all the 10, 11, 12-year-old young men, in the process of being radicalized, who've seen we can take on big bad Israel and not only thrive, but be rewarded. We have all of our brothers and sisters coming home. And, there's a line I pulled up. It's from the movie Wall Street many, many years ago, one of my favorites. And the old geezer says, "I don't go to bed with no whores, and I don't wake up with no whore. That's how I live with myself. What about you?" And I just think, with making a deal with a whore like Hamas, making a deal with people who expressly want to kill you. And look, if it was like the leadership of Hamas was saying, "Look, people, we need to change. We are about, inclusivity now. We're about intellectual freedom. We're going to try to mimic Israel. We're going to be, if there was some indication that they had changed their ways, no, but they're still pulling shit, even as they're supposedly claiming they're for peace."
Listen, I would ask you to apologize for those who engage in prostitution, since you've compared them to Hamas. That's very rude.
Well, moving on a little bit, because we did talk a little bit about how America is pushing or forcing Israel into taking, or sort of, forcing Israel into taking certain actions. So now we had this issue for a few days now, where a bunch of Hamas fighters are stuck in Rafah, and what America wants to do is make some sort of a deal for them to get out, because Israel is still in control of Rafah. Witkoff specifically has said on this, we may see the model of what we are trying to do here with these 200 fighters who are trapped in Rafah, and whether they are going to be able to raise their hands, walk out, turn over their weapons. This will be one of the tests. So this is what Witkoff is proposing. Basically, these 200 Hamas terrorists will be able to get out simply if they surrender and give up their weapons. Now, Netanyahu seemed to be like maybe accepting of this, but even then he said some would have to be arrested, because I'm not even sure if we have like the complete intel of who exactly might be here. But this might be like people who have committed October 7th. These might be people responsible for Israeli deaths. The idea that simply give up your weapons, simply surrender, and suddenly you get amnesty. You can just go to Gaza and not even like stop being a terrorist, right? When they go to Gaza, they get their weapons back, or they get different weapons back from Hamas. So, yeah, I mean, what is this? What even is this kind of deal? And what if even if it did happen, as Witkoff says, what is it proving? That Hamas will temporarily give up their weapons so they can kill Jews another day?
All right, so this is a very good example for how bad the situation is. So let's start with who these people are. So if you take the most conservative estimates, these people are basically enemy militants, just for the sheer reason that we have after the deal, okay, this is the fact. This is a fact of reality that this deal in fact happened, unfortunately. But since it did happen, those people are in the area beyond the yellow line. They're not in the side ruled by Hamas, which is just that it's a travesty that there is such a side still. They're not in this side. They are in the side under Israeli control, and they're hiding underground with weapons. The sheer fact they're saying they should hand the weapon implies that we already know they have weapons. So these are militants under Israeli territory. And just for that reason, they are basically, what we need to do is to seal those tunnels with concrete. So they would drown in concrete and their body will be sealed in concrete and forgotten. This is the proper thing to do with those people. Now, this is just for them being there, while this is an Israeli territory, and they are militants. Now, these people probably, some of them probably entered Israel on October 7th and murdered, raped, tortured, used bodies of innocent Israelis as trophies, kidnapped, committed atrocities, etc. Some of them probably are. Another fact, out of these areas, of these tunnels in Rafah, after the supposed ceasefire, came out attacks against Israelis, and they have killed Israeli soldiers and people under the Israeli security force. So it's not like, oh, oops, we got stuck in there. It's quite embarrassed. We're armed. Let's find a way to get back, to surrender and get back to Gaza. No, they're actively still trying to kill Jews. These are people eager to kill Jews and so passionate about it that after the deal with Hamas, they still said, no, we're going to stay there and just keep attempt killing Jews. So this is the nature of these people. So we've spoken about why they deserve, even before I've mentioned all of those things, just for being there. Now, let's discuss what is the meaning of the United States pressuring Israel to accept their surrender into Hamas territory. This is just, I have no word to describe it. It's like if you look at another word, it's like a kangaroo court. It's like a complete facade. Like, first of all, the idea that their ideology has no relevance and their actions has no relevance, and there is no point judging it morally, and just like, oh, they would hand out the weapon and go over there and then it's fine. This is a completely materialistic view that completely ignores how people are driven by action and just people, innocent people, proper societies has a responsibility to act with justice towards such people, which means delivering them their earned and deserved death penalty. In this case, the best method will be death by concrete because they're already in the tunnel. Now, instead of saying, oh, they'll hand out the weapons, so they'll become, functioning innocent parts of society. Like, what the hell does it even mean? Now, what is the motive for that? Why wouldn't the United States of America just say, well, yeah, whatever, just drown them in concrete? Who cares? These are a bunch of sickening, evil terrorists that it's an insult to Earth to allow them to walk on the soil of the Earth. It's what the hell? Now, the reason the United States is pressuring Israel to give it up returns to the point I made earlier. They are so eager to continue with the ribbon tying, cutting ceremonies in Kazakhstan and in Saudi Arabia and wherever. They are so eager to keep on with this big, useless, destructive deal that's supposedly going to bring peace to the Middle East. They're basically urging Israel to not only give up everything I mentioned earlier, its sovereignty, security, future, it's also demanding Israel to give up justice to the people trying to destroy.
No question. I just have to say, I mean, from an American perspective, it's been obvious Trump has been lobbying for the Nobel Prize and his claim to having solved X number of wars.
But
that's a big part of his campaign stump speech now.
Even if he wants the Peace Nobel Prize, and that's the motive. Let's say there is a let's try to think rationally. You are the president of the United States. You want to create peace with the Middle East. Will you achieve peace in the Middle East by teaching the savages they can murder whoever they want and make a deal so they can get a second try? Is this the formula for peace in the Middle East? Is there any rational being thinks it's the formula for peace in the Middle East? Like, this is a complete delusional, idiotic ideology that unfortunately rules the West, but everyone with two eyes and a brain says it's completely absurd, stupid, unrealistic, immoral, not practical, evil, and sadistic method to implement on a region. Now, the fact that Netanyahu was almost willing to accept the American pressure, and the only reason it's not yet to happen is because there is a legit outrage in Israel, at least within those who still care about whatever's going on. They're saying, like, what the hell are you doing? These are people that are, like, these people must die. Like, what the hell is going on? And so now I think what's happening behind the scene is, like, Netanyahu comes to Trump and says, listen, Trump, well, as you can see, there is a lot of internal pressure in Israel, and I'm worried that this will make the government collapse. And of course, you don't want that since you want the Abraham Accords. So we need to find a way to silently solve this situation. Maybe we dribble them in, one by one in silent until this problem will disappear. So this is what I think going on right now. Like basically, Netanyahu is using the pressure to ask the U.S. administration to help him to dissolve this issue without pissing off the Arab world. And why will the Arab world be pissed off and stop all the deals? Because Israel will follow the virtue of justice and kill those trying to destroy it. So it's completely upside down, complete moral inversion, complete moral bankruptcy. And this is just sad for me. And as an Israeli, it's also terrifying. I think about my future. I wanna live, and I'm having a good time within the Israeli society. It's a pretty good society. Besides this whole issue of their blind following of just war theory out of ignorance, I think, because if they would really know what it means, they would be like, hell no, we live in this BS aside. By the way, the whole fiasco with the Israeli military persecution is morally stems from them accepting just war theory and being members of their religion, not praying to Vatican, but praying to The Hague. So this is another, it's all stems from this issue. And it's a tragedy. It's a huge tragedy. And a lot of people died, a lot of people suffered, a lot of blood and tears were shed just for people to keep lying to themselves about those premises. It's sad.
Yeah, and something to point out also about the idea of peace, because there is advocating for peace or actually being and standing for peace, and then there is the Nobel Peace Prize, because you don't get a Nobel Peace Prize for actually achieving peace. You get a Nobel Peace Prize for compromising with dictatorships. Look at Obama. Peace Prize for, well, he got it before he did anything, but one of the things he sort of like achieved peace was the deal with Iran, right? Compromise with a dictatorship and you get rewarded this. And in a similar way, if Trump achieves this peace, it means surrendering to Hamas, and yeah, I think that is sort of thing you get a Nobel Peace Prize for. I mean, again, which Israelis did win the Nobel Peace Prize? If we go to the Palestinian side first, it was Yasser Arafat. And it was the Israeli prime minister during that time. They got the peace prize for the same deal, which again, from the Israeli side, it was surrendering. It was giving territory to Palestinians, not Palestinians. It was giving territory to a terrorist organization so they could establish themselves. That's what you get a Nobel Peace Prize for. That is what is the standard right now when it comes to peace. And this is what Trump is sort of going for. Which again, if you actually did want to achieve peace, it would be fighting the ideology that actually causes war, fighting the ideology of dictatorships, of wanting to destroy other nations. It would be wiping out the regime of Iran. It would be wiping out the ideology that currently fuels the Palestinians. I do want Jonathan, do you want to jump in? Because
Yeah,
I
no,
do
I
want to
mean,
switch the topic, but yeah.
I often think of this notion of if you were in a shipwreck and you could only swim towards one of two islands. One was, let's say, Tel Aviv, and one was Gaza. Like, where would you swim towards? Would you swim towards, the land that protected rights, that respected individuals of every race, creed, color, etc., that promoted reason, that promoted technology and advancement, and became, or would you swim towards a backward theocracy, which throws gays off buildings, and who as Yar alluded to, commits horrible atrocities against other people. So Israel is the shining example of reason in the Middle East, and
But
to make
Jonathan,
any so-called deal with Hamas is a joke on its face.
Jonathan, I just want to say this is a problematic example because look at Greta. She sailed to Gaza, but she did it just to get free sandwiches from Israel. So, even if you choose to go there, you will get free stuff and treated well by the Israelis. So it's a false dichotomy.
Yeah, and to throw something more on this, Deborah in the chat says just war theory only works when both sides subscribe to it. It doesn't work with jihadis. So I would still say that just war theory doesn't work. But also the countries that accept just war theory don't go to war with each other, because usually it's the countries that have respect for individual rights that accept also just war theory.
I want to talk about it. I want to address this point. So just war theory stems from the morality of altruism. So if you adopt just war theory, you basically adopted the morality of altruism. And the more you are committed to such morality, you don't even need an external enemy. You will destroy yourself from within. So even if you don't have any enemies, if you've reached to a point where you accepted just war theory, in essence, you are following the altruist premises, and you will eventually bring your own destruction by yourself. And even the honest and decent and just people in such society, and by just I mean actually rational being, will be eventually subjected by society to be sacrificed to the parasites and bullies and whomever, and you'll have nothing left. So this point is basically a non-essential point. So yeah, like if you have whatever military strategy you have, and you have actually no enemies that want to destroy you, or whatever military strategy will work, but the core values and premises, these are the actual fundamental problem, and it can lead to self-destruction. So in Israel, yeah, it's self-destruction by proxy. Israelis are basically those who accept this morality basically sacrifice themselves via proxy, via the Palestinians. But in other altruist societies, it's just like destruction, self-destruction by sacrificing the engineers and the entrepreneurs and the scientists and the rational people, sacrificing them for the masses and those in need. So it's the same.
Yeah, but also it's important to remember that free nations fundamentally they don't go to war with each other. You cannot find like an example in like almost ever in history of a free America fighting a free Britain. And when there is a war, it's actually over some injustice that was happening, like actual injustice, like the American Revolution. But even then, I'm not sure if sort of UK would be classified as like a free nation by today's standards. So this is the fundamental point that is happening. Now, to bring in something a little bit that has been sort of being floating around, which I'm not even sure if it ever actually will happen, as part of this ceasefire deal, something that should happen next, again, if it ever does, and I hope it doesn't, but the transitional force is supposed to take over Gaza. Now, there's been a question of who would be part of this transitional force, and a big question is, of course, Turkey. Turkey has broken all their relations with Israel. Turkey has been very supportive of Hamas. Erdogan is very much, wants to have to possibly even destroy the nation of Israel. And he is now arguing for, he is in contact with Hamas leadership. They're actively talking on what role will Turkey play in Gaza? Of course, Israel is saying Turkey will play no role in Gaza. Instead, it will be the better nations like Qatar, which are, better for some reason. But yeah, this is the question now. And again, this is what Witkoff is basing all of his opinions on, right? It's like the good scenario. Like, this is the good scenario that everybody is imagining. The good scenario is the ceasefire goes through completely. It means some other Arab nations will take over Gaza that do not want friendly relations with Israel, that do not even right now have friendly relations with Israel. This is viewed as like the positive scenario. How can we ever sort of hope for anything positive? Where again, like Turkey is, still viewed as like a possible nation that will be, close to Israel.
So first, let's say describe the rationally desired scenario, which I don't see happening anytime soon. But the good ending for this saga is Palestinianism becomes an obscure old ideology, ancient part of history. Everybody is now condemning it, and it's a taboo, and everybody's saying like, oh my God, I can't believe I was a pro-Palestinian once. Like, of course, not me, but like those Europeans or Americans or whoever. It will be like, the left in the 1920s and 30s was very eager supporting Nazism. And after the World War II, of course, they were very embarrassed and ashamed and kind of evaded it. But I want the same phenomenon to happen. I want, Israel destroying Palestinianism, destroying this ideology, killing its fighters, and people understanding the atrocities and just embarrassed that they have ever supported it and moving on. And this scenario is possible, but it takes a lot of people changing their minds about some fundamentals. So it can take a while, if ever will happen. Now, in regards to the current proposed solution in the making, you know my thoughts on that. You've heard it earlier in the show. It's a catastrophe, a fiasco, a tragedy, self-fraud, self-deception. The West and the Israeli government, who's agreed to that, is basically playing charades. And the fact that Turkey is now rising as the new Iran is horrible. It's really bad because, unlike Iran, Turkey is a strong economy. Turkey is doing business with the West. Turkey is a member in NATO. Turkey has one of the strongest militaries in the Middle East and in the world. People underestimate Turkey. Yeah, they're tribalist, socialist. Erdogan is a dictator. It's basically a mixed economy towards tyranny. Yet they're very powerful, they're very anti-Semitic, and they're very accepted in the West. And now they feel the void left by Iran becoming a little bit politically weaker, although they're still trying to achieve weapons of mass destruction. This is a different story. But yet Turkey is now taking over. And he said Turkey will not be in Gaza. Turkey is already in Gaza by a humanitarian organization helping with infrastructure, which they have presence of people basically working for Turkey. I won't be surprised if they're spying against us already from Gaza. They are a major political player. They have close relationship with the American administration, and they keep trying to get more and more of reach into Israel. Also, look at Syria. Geographically, Syria is a neighbor of Israel and a neighbor of Turkey, which means it's a link via land connecting between Israel and Turkey. Turkey is already sending military equipment into Syria and probably soldiers and advisors, which means Turkey basically has a direct route into Israel, i.e. invasion. So this is a very sensitive, difficult situation. And what Israel needs right now is a backbone. What Israel needs right now is to stand up in front of America, in front of the world, and just not to allow it, whether it means even taking over parts of Syria, which means, like, for example, like helping the Druze in Syria to gain independence. So just at least it will be buffering between Israel and the Turks and Syrians, which hopefully will not, but they probably are trying to destroy Israel. The whole thing with Giuliani as well, he should never been recognized. It's a terrorist. He's basically is going to solve soft Islamism. I think, in essence, I see a lot of similarities between Giuliani and Mamdani with the fraud they are committing. They both are basically fooling the West. Mamdani is a classic communist, like the communism before 1917, before people seen the atrocities, and when they could actually promise people that it will bring peace and prosperity. And Mamdani is the same thing, but with Islamism. And this whole thing is just a complete disaster. In this, like, Israel has solved a lot of problems in this war, but there are a lot of new problems just coming out of the void. And it's just really, really bad.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan, yeah, I'll just throw it to you. But we do seem to sort of like, NATO was created after 45, and there were like relations set up in after 45, after World War II. And it seems like we haven't updated almost like any of our relations. We haven't looked at or like, okay, who are our actual allies? Who, are our actual people we should have relationship with? People like as countries. The only update that seems to be coming is sort of from Trump, but it's like, annex Canada, attack Denmark type of stuff. Not actually, should we be friends with Turkey? Should Turkey be still part of NATO? So, Jonathan, where is like any sort of rational like foreign policy when it comes to who should be our ally or who should be not? Or what even is the standard when it comes to deciding that?
Well, I mean, I think of that. I mean, I think of the Palestinians themselves, to be honest. I mean, this is just from, simple Googling. Palestine is the 148th ranked economy in the world. They have a per capita GDP of about $2,500 a year. Israel, literally just a couple of 100 feet away, is one of the top 4 or 5 economies in the world, with somewhat of almost a $60,000 per year per capita GDP. So it's like, what I'd love to see is the Palestinians themselves waving Israeli flags saying, come take us over. Why wouldn't they want to be part of Israel? Why wouldn't any rational person around Israel not want to join a thriving, prosperous, secular society? I mean, anyone with a modicum of sense would be running to join that society. And the Palestinians don't seem to. And I think the deals that are made with them only emboldens them. And it says that, no, this theocratic lifestyle and this, Jew hatred is just a way of life, and teaching your kids with the little AKs, and that's just going to go on for another generation. It's a shame because, it's you think of, again, we've talked a lot about World War II as a comparison, but, the decades and decades of prosperous, ambitious Japanese wealth that has been created because those bad ideas were finally exterminated when they were at the end of the Second World War.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan.
Or
rationality, the answer is, and you know the answer, but still, I'll just say the obvious. Rationality is a volitional faculty. You are able to be rational. You can be rational sometimes, most of the times, all the times, but you have to choose to do it. And the people holding the Palestinian ideology is a result of them giving up rationality. So your question, how can any rational man would not want to have peace with Israel and to have cooperation and friendship with Israel, is assumes they have chosen rationality. They never have. They only use their mind to figure out how to lie to Israel, to deceive Israel, to kill Israel. They got, there is the example of the pipes. They got pipes to have water systems, and they use their mind to see how to turn them into missiles. And then they whine about being thirsty. So they would never ever use the mind in whatever thing regarding to their evil collectivist, tribalist, anti-Semite premises. They only use their mind to figure out how to destroy Israel better and how to make it in their next attempt.
Yeah, and something to also point out when it comes to certain populations deciding to actually be free. We had this example even in the history, right? The fall of the Berlin Wall. East Berliners actually going out. The people, after the government has said that it will go down or it wasn't immediate, they came out and they destroyed the wall. They said no, we want to join the West. There were people, and this happened in many of the Eastern European nations, right? They rose up and said, okay, we do actually want to be more free. We no longer want to sustain this regime. But there's two things that are happening with Palestinians, right? They already had a chance to be part of Israel. They were part of Israel. Palestinians were free to large extent travel from Amman in Jordan to Tel Aviv in Israel. There was a relative freedom of movement. There was a relative peace. And it was one nation, and they've said no, we'd rather change our course. We'd rather they did the opposite of what the East Europeans did. They said no, we actually want to be more oppressive. We want the Palestinian Liberation Organization to come in. We want the terrorists to take over, to try to destroy all of the state of Israel. So yeah, the freedom or any sort of positive morality is a matter of choice, and Palestinians are choosing, but they are choosing to instead live in this kind of thing. And also, I would just say, we are refusing to recognize that. We are refusing to recognize that that's what's happening, that it's not about the material. It's not about that they are just not prosperous enough. It's the opposite. They are not prosperous because of their ideology.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys have probably read. It's been a while for me, but John David Lewis's book, Nothing Less Than Victory. John David Lewis was a great objectivist who wrote this wonderful book about a history of war and warfare, and to think about actually, extinguishing those ideologies, having people in effect down on their knees, and whereas moving forward, those ideologies don't exist. And what does it take to get them to that place? And I think, unfortunately, every deal that you make moves Israel in the opposite direction and emboldens evil. It says, if you hold out, Israel will fold. If you hold out, Israel will cave. And, I don't know if it's hatred for the good, for being the good, but, Miss Rand always makes the point that evil is impotent up to the point that, the good feeds it. And this is once again just the good feeding the evil when it should be exterminated, in my opinion, completely.
Yeah, and sort of the last thing I guess we have two more topics that we wanted to bring up, so we have to be fast. So first, we can just quickly discuss the case of Iran. So people might remember earlier this year, both Israel and America striked Iran. They destroyed, or at least we think I think there is certain understanding that we did at least limit their capability of their nuclear program, although but this is from the regime itself. They say they haven't really, that basically the enriched uranium was preserved, although it is preserved under the rubble, so they would have to get to it if they want to continue. But the president, the reformist president of Iran, has recently said, we are willing to hold talks under international frameworks, but not if they say you can't have a nuclear science or the right to defend yourself, or else we will bomb you. So, I mean, yeah, it seems like Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, is straight up saying, no, 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 give us your sanction, give us your, and we don't mean like economic sanction, but sanction of like, recognize our regime, say that we are on equal footing with you, and then we can make some sort of a deal. And this is like the quote from the Star Wars. It's a trap. This is exactly what would preserve the regime of Iran. That would help it stand up. The regime itself would help stand up to the protesters in Iran, and would abandon all those protesters. Right? This is exactly what we should not do.
Yeah, so I think there is a big compliment to Israel. In this case, it's a just compliment. When a tyrannical regime is extremely worried about the existence of a free country, it is because this free country is a good example, a good demonstration for the subjects of the tyranny that things could work differently. When the people in Iran, at least there are people in Iran that are rational and oppressed, and the Basij and the KGB of Iran is basically not letting them to express themselves, but they see Israel. They see a nation that is free, the people are free to study, to work, to talk, to have an ideology, to wear whatever they want to wear. And they see how strong such a country becomes. And the mullah regime, the ayatollahs see it and are frightened, and they see it as an attack on them. So they want to destroy this free nation. This is an evil, tyrannical regime, and every free nation that exists is basically a grave danger for them. This is why they call the United States of America the big devil and Israel the small devil, because this is basically the worst enemies of evil, the free countries. I don't take into account so much what they say. It's all a bunch of BS to fit into the Western rhetoric and morality. When Iranians and Palestinians, like the Iranian regime and Palestinians, talk about freedom, they mean the opposite of freedom. They mean tribalist enslavement. When a Palestinian says, I want to be free, he means, I want to be free to subordinate women into my tribe. I want to be free to kill Jews. And we need to remember, freedom is the knowledge that you can act rationally without having other people trying to stop you with force. Freedom is the absence of coercion. And you cannot be free to commit coercion. This is a contradiction. But this is what they mean when they say freedom. And when the Iranians means self-defense, they mean the opposite. They mean initiating an act of genocide. This is what they mean by self-defense. And so it's a complete moral inversion. And of course, Israel is blamed for what the Iranians want to commit. Israel is blamed on what the Palestinians started doing in October 7th. And I'm glad we managed to stop them, and it took us too long, in my opinion, because we are so afraid to recognize the evil that is next to us. But this is what's going on, and it's all just a bunch of bullcrap, and the Western community just accepts it and everything. Listen, regarding Iran, they're still working very hard to achieve nuclear weapons. The West is still playing games with them, but it's moving to a right direction. The snapback mechanism is on. The Iran's water reservoirs are becoming empty, by the way, because of the way the government runs this. They shouldn't run it in the first place, and they run it really bad because they're corrupted and evil and tyrannical. And I think they're going to implode politically quite soon, just because, when people in a tyrannical regime have no water, they're going to eventually take down such regime. The question is, what will happen after such regime is down? Will they be smart enough to actually establish some sort of a free society? I think they have what it takes, but it's not going to be easy. So I don't know, but I'm more worried about Turkey. I'm worried about Syria. I'm more concerned about Hamas. I'm more concerned about Israel allowing the Western world to take over the unarming of Hezbollah. And it seems like Israel have to go again into Lebanon to return to the momentum they've started and hand into the Western world to just do nothing with it. So we might have to go into war with Hezbollah again after they have a year to take a breath and reorganize and recruit new fighters and to arm them and everything. So it just over and over again. As I said, the enemies of Israel always gets another chance. Israel never gets a chance to finish the job and to actually protect itself against evil. And it's just, over and over again. But regarding Iran, I'm convinced it's a very likely scenario that the Ayatollah regime will collapse in the next couple of years even.
Yeah, and Jonathan Pezeshkian also said, we want to live in this world in peace and security, but not be humiliated. It is not acceptable that they impose upon us whatever they want and we just serve them. But fact of reality is that they do not have any moral standing to demand such thing. If you want to be a legitimate country, you need to recognize the rights of your own people. You need to recognize the rights of individual people within your country. If you don't do that, I don't care what you say. I don't care about the peace and security you're demanding. I don't care about the humiliation you do not want to get. You have no legitimacy to exist as a country, and anything any other country wants to impose on you is, I think, just. It's only the only question is it in the interest of that country to actually do something to you?
Miss Rand has a quote. I can't remember it exactly, but paraphrasing it, something to the effect of, a country that doesn't recognize the rights of its own citizens isn't going to recognize the rights of other countries or other countries' citizens. And that's, certainly the case, in the Middle East, Israel surrounded by, a sea of Islamist collectivism with controlled backward economies, as against, the innovation and the free market ideology, if you will, and the entrepreneurship of the Israeli and the dynamism of Israeli economy. So it's so tremendous how powerful it has become by unleashing the human mind, especially when contrasted against, as you said, Yar, it's like they sent them pipes for fresh water. They turned them into dirty, ugly cannons for, crude cannons to, mindlessly shoot up, bombs and weapons and stuff. So it's the ideas which have to change. And unfortunately, I think war is the only thing that does that. And the truce, the peace, the promises to disarm, I think only prolong, what's needed, which is a real ideological change.
Yeah, and so we don't have much time to actually cover the Kazakhstan, so we might do a separate episode about it. Yeah, any last thoughts? Or if you want to just have some thoughts on Kazakhstan, but like keep it under a minute, basically, or any other closing thoughts.
A guy in the comment, I think he is called John Z. Base, wrote, Islam and Judaism have the most in common. Well, I would say men share 60% of his DNA with a banana. Like, what's your conclusion with that? And I am an associate in the Ayn Rand Center Israel, and I please go to aynrand.org.il/about to find out more about Ayn Rand Center Israel. I think it's doing a really good job. And also, I'm a leading member of the Victory Now movement, where we present a true plan for Israel's victory, peace, and prosperity, and the moral case for it. And I think it's a very important project, and we're really so close to releasing the book. We just have some legal things we have to solve, and to form all of the things we need to do to make sure it comes out in the best way ever. So please visit www.victory.now to support us, to join the waiting list for the book, and I think it's going to be great.
Jonathan, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
It just thanks to our supporters. I'm available at capitalistpig.com for a free portfolio consultation in terms of your investments. And also check out a new textbook of Americanism, Ayn Rand on Politics. That's at Amazon, a new textbook of Americanism.
And with that, thank you guys for joining me today. We'll be back tomorrow with an episode of The Daily Objective. Until then, bye-bye.
Thank you very much.